This one is brought to you by Flowdesk, the email marketing platform I use to run my own newsletter at Lion Creatives. If you've been putting off starting an email list or you're on a platform that just isn't working for you, Flowdesk is worth a look. The templates are beautiful, it's easy to use, and it's built for small business owners. Get 25% off your first year at flowdesk.com/c/Lion Creatives, but I'll make sure to drop the link in the show notes.
And I promise you, your audience is there. I promise you, we are not oversaturated in podcasts. There are still more blogs than podcasts. There are still more books being published every year than podcasts. There are still, we're not oversaturated. It's just that you have to be a little bit more strategic about how you go about finding that audience and also how to leverage a small audience.
Welcome to This Might Get Creative, a Behind the Brand podcast by Lion Creatives. I'm Svenja Lion, and in each episode, I sit down with local business owners and entrepreneurs to share their stories, how they got started, what keeps them going, and what makes their business stand out. My goal? To help more amazing businesses be seen, supported, and celebrated. So grab your coffee, because this might just get creative. Okay, so since we are recording already, welcome back to This Might Get Creative, a Behind the Brand podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who want to pull back the curtain on branding strategy and what it really takes to build something that lasts. And I'm very excited about my guest today because she has been in podcasting longer than most people have been thinking about it, and definitely longer than I have. And she has produced the award-winning shows, she taught the workshops, and she built the agency. But right now she's in the middle of a pivot, and that says a lot about where the industry is headed, away from how do I start a podcast, and towards is this one still working for me? So Andrea Klunder is the founder of the Creative Impostor Studios. She produces podcasts for arts organizations, cultural institutions, and changemakers. Work that has earned a Tribeca Festival selection, Signal Award Gold, and a long list of recognition that I'm not going to read right now. But she also teaches, and I really like that, she teaches a podcasting program for high school students in Chicago, which is where she gets her best read on where the new culture is heading and going. We are going to talk about what has changed in podcasting, what it takes to make a show that works for your business, and how to use a podcast as part of your marketing, not just as a side hustle. And because a podcast is the strongest trust-building tool you can have. Welcome, Andrea, to the show.
I love that intro. Thank you so much. I like the way you summarized my very long, lengthy, all the awards, all the speaking, all the things. Thank you for helping me condense that.
Yes, totally did it by myself.
With a little assistant named Claude? Is that what I heard?
Maybe. Maybe. Psh, secret. So, to get started, you have been producing podcasts for a long time. How did it get started? Because we talked about that last week. And what is the conversation that you're having with established podcasters that you didn't have when you just got started?
Yeah, so a little over a decade ago, I was a different kind of entrepreneur. I had a brick and mortar storefront yoga studio that I was operating for about 5 years, and that ended in bankruptcy. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, no.
Yes, it was a very sad story. And I learned a lot from that experience about myself. We've often heard it said that entrepreneurship or being self-employed is kind of like the most intense personal development that somebody can do. And that is true. I will vouch for that statement. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about business. And I closed that business down and was broke, unemployed, depressed.
Oh, no.
I promise this has a happy ending.
Okay.
And I didn't really know what to do. And I, had well-meaning friends that said, oh, just, you have so many skills, just go get a job. Like you tried the entrepreneur thing. It didn't work out. It's okay. You just, and I was like, I can't go get a job. This is not, once you have a taste of the freedom and the flexibility and the autonomy of being in business for yourself. I mean, for some people, it's not what they want. And for me, it was everything, just the financial piece didn't work out that first go around. And so I kind of, was thinking what to do. And in the midst of just sitting around and feeling like doing nothing, I was listening to podcasts. And when I had the yoga studio, I didn't really know what a podcast was. And I had clients who were saying, oh, you should start a yoga podcast. You're really good at describing the yoga postures and telling us how to do things without us looking at it. I'm like, I don't know what a podcast is. People gave me recommendations to listen to. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. But I don't know how, I don't have time to think about how to do this. I don't know how to fit this into my business model. So I just kind of set it aside. And what's funny about it is that actually my undergraduate college degree is in broadcast communication and video production. And so I had a little bit of a tech background, albeit from the 1990s. So 1990s tech, very different than now. Yeah. But in terms of like the theories and storytelling and interview skills and kind of understanding how to structure a piece of media for public consumption, all of that I understood. And so I was spending my time listening to these podcasts and I thought, this is something I can do. I don't know how to turn it into a business. I don't know how to make money off of it, but I hear other people doing it. I hear other people creating a community. I hear other people launching businesses. I think there's something to this. So I'm just gonna start a podcast. And remember, I had no money, so I couldn't hire a coach or a consultant. I couldn't, invest in a lot of stuff. I had to kind of scrap together my initial setup, Google around on the internet to try to find like free how to start your podcasting courses. And it was very time consuming, but that was all I had was time. So I did it the long DIY way, which I don't necessarily recommend for most business owners, because if you are actively in business, you don't have time to do it the long DIY way. Mm-hmm. I started my show, The Creative Impostor, and it was interesting. It was fun. I was talking to cool people. I was kind of learning as I was going, still didn't know how to turn it into a business. And then people started asking me, oh, that's so cool that you have a podcast. I kind of want to start a podcast. Could you help me? And I was just, freely like meeting people for coffee and saying like, yeah, I did this and click here and go to this link. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, this is something I can charge for.
Yeah, much better than a yoga podcast.
Yeah, and never did I set out to become a podcast launch consultant or a podcast editor for that matter, or a podcast producer, or now a podcast strategist. None of those were like aspirational, this is what I am doing. It was kind of just one step at a time. Let me do this one thing that I think I can do and see what happens. And then it kind of naturally evolved into people saying, can you help me start? And then them saying, I don't want to edit my show. Can you edit it for me? And I guess I'm a podcast editor now. And just kind of building on those skills. And then someone said, can you help us design this narrative NPR style show for our nonprofit organization? I don't know. Sure. Yes, of course. You're going to pay me. I do know how to do that. And then I just quickly go to work, like studying, learning how to do it. And so we've gotten to this point now where I've been in business and podcasting for about 10 years. It has had its ups and downs. Like it has been successful at times. It has been nerve-wracking at times. I've hit burnout at times. The industry has changed very fundamentally, as you alluded to. And we're at this point where there are a lot of people who are independently podcasting. You see the big network shows. And one of my clients who I've been working with for 9 years just texted me. I think it was yesterday. She texted me, and she and I have been having conversations back and forth about podcasts being on Netflix now.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, oh, and I have not listened to it.
No, don't like.
Why would I go on Netflix listen to a podcast? I don't know. It's weird.
It's bizarre to me, and I. I'm a very audio person. I don't even do podcasts on you. Like I create podcasts on YouTube for clients, but I don't consume podcasts on YouTube. However, my high school students do. So that's another conversation. But she's like, are podcasts on TV like Netflix? Is that like the evil corporation's way of, shutting out the indies and like making it harder and I was like, no, they don't even care. They don't even care about the indies. Like it's like an entirely different thing. It's like, if you think about books, right? You have like the New York Times bestseller books, and then you have like the self-published independent press books, and then you have the academic books, and then like book is the medium. But the niche in which that medium, if you're going to publish or you're going to write or be an author, where that is all a different ecosystem. It's all a different strategy. It's all a different brand. And it's the same thing with podcasts. The podcast is the medium, but whether it's audio or video, it's on YouTube, it's part of a network, it's on NPR and public radio, it's on Netflix. Those are all different ecosystems for the same medium. And I was like, please, like, I'm like, have you watched any of the Netflix podcasts? And she's like, absolutely not. And I was like, okay, don't. This calls to mind. We've always had, it's like the Jerry Springer of daytime television, right? If anyone's old enough to remember Jerry Springer, it's like, it's making us all dumber, but we've always had media in every format that is like the dumbing down of the medium.
Yeah.
So that's my soapbox about Netflix podcasts. Like, great. Do you know what it does for the indie? It makes more people aware of the word podcast, and it makes the podcast concept more accessible and more widely available, where it's not like, what's a podcast? How I was, when when people are like, you should start a yoga podcast. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So, but going back to that, when you first started and going back to what you're doing now, it's the, helping people to edit, or that's where we're in the story right now, where you help people to edit and to bring the podcast to life. That was, what did you say, 10 years ago?
Yeah, that started about 10 years ago.
Yeah. So, and even then, I don't think I was listening to podcasts 10 years ago. I don't think, it was all just new. And it's kind of like that Facebook phenomenon when you were on Facebook, when it just got started, and then you found this moms group all of a sudden, and then your business blew up because, it wasn't as popular yet. So that's kind of what I see the podcast like years ago, but now. Yeah, it went
from you started your podcast. You, Svenja, would say you were very progressive and forward thinking at the time, 10 years ago, in this fictional world. And you were like, I think I really want to have a podcast. And then you would tell people about your podcast, and they would have no idea what you're talking about. What's a podcast? How do I find it? Do I have to pay for it? Like, there wasn't, constantly I was going around saying, do you have an iPhone? Okay. You already have a podcast app on your iPhone. It's built in. Let's find it. And like, sometimes they had deleted it because they didn't know what it was. I'm like, it's the little purple square. They're like, oh, I never knew what that was for, Yeah. And so it's changed because now most people know what a podcast is, but different people have different definitions. Some people automatically think YouTube. Some people automatically think NPR. Some people automatically think Joe Rogan. Some people automatically think now, I guess, Netflix.
I mean, I saw it on Netflix, but I'm like, well, Netflix. If I go on Netflix, I want to watch a show. But okay,
right, correct.
Enough of Netflix. Yeah, but when it's funny because when me and my husband, we really got into podcasts was the Rich Roll podcast.
Yeah,
I loved it. I still love it. So, and but that was the beginning. That's when we really started listening to podcasts. Yeah, but going back to you. So, what changed?
I think just over time, I think that you've experienced this too. When we were talking for my show, The Creative Impostor, and I was interviewing you, you had talked about sort of how you sort of evolved from being a quote graphic designer to getting the bigger picture and the more strategic lens of being a brand consultant and being a creative director. And so it started from that very small skill set of graphic design. And then as you continue to work in that field and you become more skillful and you learn more and you see more and you experience more and you work with more people, you begin to see how that fits into the bigger picture. And that's sort of what has happened with podcasting is like, it started with, how do I make a podcast? How do I teach someone else to make a podcast? How do I edit? How do I construct a narrative story arc over a season? How do I do sound design? It's like one step at a time. And now we're at this place where podcasting is more known in the world. You don't always have to explain what a podcast is anymore. And however, it is harder now than it was 10 years ago for that podcasting audience to find your show. There used to be, a long time ago, I used to teach these in-person how to podcast workshops in my community. And I had like 2 marketing slides in that like startup class. And I would say, here are marketing channels to grow your audience. And one of them was the magic of Apple Podcasts. But at the time, Apple Podcasts wasn't called Apple Podcast. It was still iTunes at that time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the magic of iTunes. Because it was, if you, Svenja, created a personal branding podcast, you might be one of like 15 or 20 that we're actively producing. So if someone was looking for that subject area, you're gonna pop up. And you're gonna, even if you're a newer show, even if you have a smaller audience to begin with, even if you don't have a big marketing budget, in that search, if someone was looking for those topics and you were specific enough in your topic, you could easily be found. Now, there's so many podcasts. A lot of them aren't even active, but the directories don't necessarily, like, you might pull up a podcast in your search and it's like, they haven't published since like 2019. Why is this coming up in my search results? I want something that's current, you know? But it might be harder for you to be organically found in that podcast directory. So now what it's looking like is, unless you were one of those OG podcasters from even before I started doing it and you had already built this massive audience, or unless you're somebody who has a massive audience elsewhere who is bringing that audience along to your podcast, it can take a lot more effort and time and strategy to really find your audience. And I promise you, your audience is there. I promise you, we are not oversaturated in podcasts. There are still more blogs than podcasts. There are still more books being published every year than podcasts. There are still, like, we're not oversaturated. It's just that you have to be a little bit more strategic about how you go about finding that audience, and also how to leverage a small audience. Like, we don't need to have 1 million subscribers in order to have our podcast work for us, as long as we understand where the podcast fits into what it is that we're trying to do in our life or work. So that's where that strategic positioning comes in. And that's really what I'm trying to help people to do, because we have a lot of people who've been podcasting for maybe a year, 5 years, 9 years, in the case of, you know, my client that I was having a conversation about Netflix with. But then they're like, my audience doesn't seem like it's growing, or I don't know if this is working, or I'm putting a lot of time or money or effort into this, and I don't know if it's, quote, working. And so they quit, right? Because they're not seeing an obvious result. And so I don't want people to quit. I want people to keep making their show. I want people to love making their show. I don't want them to give up. And so sometimes it's just a perspective shift. Sometimes it's just like one thing you need to tweak or do differently that will unlock whatever that reward is that your show can provide for you.
Yeah. And I want to dig a little deeper on this one, because that goes with the question: if you have your business and you have the podcast and you're treating it, you want to have it as part of your business. But I mean, how it was in my case at the beginning, it was just a side project, something that I thought it was cool. But then, so then at that moment, it wasn't a lot of work, but I don't think it got a lot of traction either. However, once you align it with your whole brand and how, and make it so that it fits into your whole environment of your business, then there's a shift, because then you can use things, even if you don't have the audience. I feel like you can invite and have conversations with so many people, and then you can all use that for your benefit. It's not just about the people or the amount of listeners that you have. It's also about the content that you can get from it.
Okay, I literally have, so this is a not so well disguised plug for my private podcast that I have that people can subscribe to. It's free. And it's less of a produced podcast, and it's more of voice notes from me, because I'm producing podcasts all day long, and I kept trying to like do this private podcast for people who want to learn more about podcasting, and I would get bogged down in the editing. And I was like, you know what, let me just record the voice memo when I'm thinking about it with the strategy and publish it as is. I'm not going to do any post-production. I'm not going to do any editing. It's just, but that's why it's a secret podcast. Yeah. So you do have to put your email and be on the list. It's called Peace, Love, and Podcasting. And the reason why I bring it up is because one of the episodes that I released earlier this spring is called What If Your Podcast Isn't Just for Your Audience? And it's exactly what you're talking about, Svenja, which is that you can design your podcast experience for multiple different functions in your business and in your professional world. And how you make choices about your show is going to be based on what it is that you want your show to do for you. And so in this case, my question and what you were kind of leaning into is that sometimes the podcast is about the audience. Sometimes the podcast is about finding new leads for your business or your product or your service. That's actually the hardest thing to do with your podcast, is to directly make money from like advertising. That's one that's challenging. The other one that's challenging is actually making sales. And those are the first two things people think of, is how do I make money? How do I get more clients? What it's actually very good at doing is building these relationships and these connections. You and I we don't live in the same city. We're not going to meet for a coffee. We're not going to meet at an in-person networking event. We have this connection through an online group of entrepreneurs. And the only reason we met through that group is because of our podcast, because you said, hey, you put a pitch out there and said, I am looking to have these podcast conversations. This is what I want to talk about. And I'm like, great, this feels like a good match for what I'm doing, because, you know, maybe I don't have a personal branding expert in my network and in my community. And I may or may not be your ideal client, but I may have clients who will also need your services, and vice versa. You may not be helping somebody produce a podcast, but somebody might say, oh yeah, as part of my branding, I have this podcast, or I want, and then we have that connection. So, whoever is watching or listening to this episode, I'm so grateful for you're here. I hope that you're getting a ton of value out of this conversation. But even if no one is watching or listening, Svenja and I are getting value from this conversation.
Absolutely. By the way, we might be able to meet in person, because in August, we're going to be on a road trip, and we are driving through Chicago. So maybe we can meet for coffee.
Yes, come on by, or a slice of Chicago style pizza, whichever one you prefer.
Yes, absolutely.
And so just knowing where that is, you know, it's not just for meeting people. That's just one example of how you can set up your podcast. And what you can do is to grow your professional network, to grow your skills, to expand who you know, and make those connections and those referral points. It could also be to nurture your existing audience. Because there are people you come into contact with, maybe they see you at a speaking event, or they meet you at a networking thing, or whatever the case may be, but they're not ready to buy from you in that moment. But if they can listen to your podcast, then you're in their head. They get to know you, they get to feel comfortable with you, and you're top of mind when the need arises. Or when someone in their network says, oh, I'm looking to do this, they're like, oh my gosh, you should listen to Svenja's podcast. You know, like she's the best at that. It takes time. And that's the thing. Like you can't start your podcast and expect that you're going to have a line of new leads out the door in like 3 months. It's not that type of medium. And so because it's very effective, but it's very slow and it's a trust building medium, it's good to have that as part of your marketing mix, but not hanging your entire business on your podcast.
Yeah. And then also on the flip side, if that podcast does not fit into your branding, into your business, then, what happens then? Like, let's say in my case, I would call my podcast The Princesses and the Tutus or something. I don't even know. I'm just making this up. But it doesn't fit. And then I'm using pink and purple in the colors. And then I'm using it for my business. That doesn't work because that is another branding piece that does not fit with your overall message, with your overall strategy.
For sure. And that is, sometimes people will say, well, I don't want my podcast to feel too salesy, or I don't want it to feel, and it doesn't have to feel salesy to perform a function in your business and be aligned with your branding. Now, you can have a business and have a podcast that are completely separate and have nothing to do with each other. And the podcast is just a hobby, and hobbies are fine. I'm somebody who has a hard time when somebody's like, oh, it's a hobby. I'm like, I don't know why I have a thing against hobbies. Like, hobbies are fine. They make you a well-rounded, happier individual when you have hobbies. But you can do that, but then just make it separate. Don't have it be like something that you sometimes try to connect to your business. And that consistency with branding, like your podcast cover art should match your website, should match your social media. There's the visual branding piece of it. The reason why is because psychologically in human behavior, in our brains, when we see something is consistent and we know what to expect to a degree, we feel safer. Mm-hmm. And we feel like more of a sense of trust. If your branding is all over the place and your podcast is completely different from your business and your website and your everything is different, then we feel like we don't quite trust it, or we don't really know what it is that you're up to. And that extends beyond the visual branding, right? There's also the messaging that you have, the way that you speak, the tone of voice that you have, that you use. I often do an exercise with my podcast hosts that is kind of, before podcasting, before yoga, I did theater.
Okay.
And so for me, having a theater background and an acting background, the idea of taking on a role or a persona and still being authentic is very comfortable. But for other people who may not have that background, it's a little bit weird. But thinking about, who are you to your listener when you're podcasting? What role are you fulfilling? Are you their bestie that they're hanging out with and like listening in on the conversation? Are you a consultant who is like helping, that you're a step or two ahead of them and you're bringing them along on the journey and giving them wisdom? Are you a teacher? Are you teaching them how to do a certain thing? It's not that you can't do all three of those things, but really thinking about what is your primary relationship to your audience member? What is the role that you are? And then making choices about that, making choices about the conversations you're going to have, the topics you're going to talk about, the keywords that are going to pop up in your episode titles over and over again, now that we're thinking about AI and large language models and domain expertise and all that stuff. To me, I'm creative. I like variety. So I might say, talk about a ton of different topics and have all these different guests on your show and have every episode title be completely different. But if you want to be found, it's like, no, put those keywords in every single episode title, even if it feels repetitive. Like, oh, we just used this keyword we just used personal branding in that episode. We can't use it again. Yes, use it again. Or we just talked to somebody about this topic. We can't have that topic again. Yes, have that topic again from a different perspective. And, be choosy about who you're bringing on as guests, what the conversations that you're having are, so that they're through your lens and they're keeping your audience focused on whatever it is that you're building that domain expertise with. That was a lot of stuff that I just threw out there.
If you're a business owner and you've ever wondered why your brand isn't pulling its weight, I built something for you. It's called the Brand Audit Scorecard, and it's completely free. 10 questions, takes about 5 minutes, and it'll show you exactly where your brand is strong and where it's losing you clients. You can grab it at linecreatives.com/brand audit scorecard, and the link is in the show notes. All right, let's get back to it. It was all good stuff, because I definitely fell, as you know, into the trap of, not really at the beginning, not really focusing on who I want on the show, even though I was very lucky so far, very lucky. Everyone who came on the show was a perfect match. So everybody had a super awesome story. And, but one thing that I also find interesting, because I thought about that, again, the same, like, whatever, brand strategy. But most of the time, I'm the one that notices it, because I am so familiar with all the content that I have. Other people might not. They might see it for the first time. And so it's just because you're in it. And it's, you need to step away a little bit and then see from a different lens.
Yeah, and see, like, what is the audience experience? It's odd with podcasting, because you don't always know who your audience is. You almost never know who your audience is. You don't know. You might see numbers of, like, how many people listen to your show, but you don't know who those people are. You don't know if they're people that you know. I've had, people come up to me and say, "Oh, I loved your episode with so-and-so." And I'm like, I didn't know you listened to my podcast.
Yes. My daughter's friend, my daughter is in middle school, and her friend, she wants to be a graphic designer when she grows up. And then randomly, my daughter came home and she said that her friend, who's in middle school, is listening to my podcast. I'm like,
amazing.
That's so cool.
Probably not your target audience. You didn't set out to appeal to middle schoolers aspiring to be graphic designers, but hey, that might be a gap in the marketplace, right?
Maybe. But that brings me to maybe just jumping ahead a little bit, but you are teaching a class, and we can go into that a little later, but you're going to teach a class to middle schoolers, right?
High schoolers is my demographic.
Oh, but
what,
13,
yes. So
13,
so
15.
Yes, you are correct. So normally my program that I teach, it's an after school program in Chicago that's open to high school students across the city. And normally my program is like 9th through 12th graders. This summer is a little bit different. It's skewing a little bit younger. So they call them rising freshmen. I had never heard that phrase before, but rising freshmen. So they're coming out of 8th grade. Age 13 to 15 is the age range that I'll be working with. It's an online program. For summer, it's not after school, because many of these students are not in school. And it is teaching them how to podcast.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that.
And when we were talking, so, the percentage of, and it's supposed to be like a career development program, like giving them a preview or sampling of what a career in podcasting might be like. Now, the percentage of them that are going to go into a career in podcasting, very small. But I've had students come out of this program and go into journalism, for college, or go into, I had a student decide to do speech pathology because she liked, it was something that was in her mind already, but when she was choosing what her major was going to be in the podcasting program, the coaching that we were doing around talking on the mic and how to express yourself, like, really went into, like, helping people to become clearer speakers. And so there's different career tracks that can come out of those podcasting skills. And you and I were talking about what was going to be my focus, because this summer program is only 6 weeks long. And these are, new students who probably, some of my seniors and juniors, when they join the program, they're like, "Oh yeah, I do a podcast with my friends." And I'm like, okay, they already, are doing it. But like the 8th graders, probably not so much. And so what is the first thing that we're going to do. And we were thinking about storytelling, like personal storytelling. And I was just on a call for women leaders in podcasting, and someone dropped the Pixar story spine.
Pixar story spine.
Yes. So this is the template that Pixar uses for all of their films, or for the majority of their films. It's an award-winning template. And it's like, once upon a time, every day this happens. So you establish the status quo. And then one day, something out of the ordinary happens. This is your inciting incident.
Mm-hmm.
And then the middle of the story is, because of that incident, this happens. And because of that, this happens. Because of that, this happens, until finally the climax of the story happens. And then you get the resolution of ever since then. And sometimes you get like a lesson at the end or something that you learn, or the moral of the story.
Okay.
And I'm like, this is fascinating, because if you think of any like Pixar type movie, you could probably map it to that story structure.
Yeah.
And they've been so successful in creating films that speak to different age groups simultaneously that I'm kind of curious. And I think I might use this story structure with my students to see not necessarily how they can tell a made up story, but how can they apply this to something that happened in their life? Because I think that I run into this with adults too. I'm going to be honest. When I'm coaching podcasters and business owners, sometimes people rely on interviews too much. And this is something you and I talked about as well. As somebody who might want to work with you in the future, I like hearing solo episodes.
I know. Yes, I know.
And people will say to me, but who wants to listen to me talk for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? A lot of people do. A lot of people who, like you said, are new to the topic or have not heard of it from your lens. And how can you keep it interesting? You can tell stories in your solo episodes, because that's how we learn as humans, is through stories, not just through information. I'm going to give a bunch of information to you. No, tell a story. Like I told the story of my student who went on to study speech pathology from podcasting. And then people will say, well, I don't have any interesting stories. My life is so boring. False.
No. Yeah. No, everyone has a fun, like, but it's also, it also shows these solo episodes and the storytelling. It also gives away your character. And that's part of your branding again. So if you have a solo, and even in interviews, I mean, I do like interviews. I don't.
I do too. Don't get me wrong.
Solo episodes that much, but I still do it because you challenge me to it. So let's see if I have to create another solo episode this week. But it shows your character. It shows who you are, and then the listener can decide: do I want to work with this person? And that's okay. And if they do not want to work with that person, that's okay. Because you wouldn't have gotten this client anyways, you know?
Right. And that's, I created this framework. It's my 5-pointed framework. So it's a star to be the star of your podcast, which sounds a little bit like, but I don't want to be the star. I want it to be about my guest. Like I want to showcase and highlight my guest. And I'm like, but it's your show. So you are the star. Like Oprah is a wonderful interviewer. She's very skillful and masterful. And she has on these incredible guests, but Oprah is the star of every interview that she does, right? Yeah. Even if she doesn't talk the most, you wouldn't mistake it for somebody else. And this is the point of differentiation. So this is the personal branding piece of it, is that's the first thing that I say in this framework, is that you have to differentiate. Because like we said, there may now be, instead of 15 podcasts about personal branding, there's probably hundreds, to be honest. And some of the content might be the same. Actually, some of the guests might be the same. Like I don't go on a ton of podcasts, but I've been on multiple podcasts. So if multiple podcasts have me as a guest, what is going to make their interview with me different and specific to their brand? How are we going to differentiate? And same thing for you as a service provider. How do you differentiate your services if at the end of the day, there are hundreds or thousands of us doing podcast production coaching and, podcast editing, what is different about working with me? And a lot of that has to do with character. It has to do with personality. It has to do with approach, and how you're going to work together with that experience of working together, not just what the end product is or the end result, but what is that experience of working together like, and how is that different? And that's what I'm going to feel when I'm thinking about working with somebody who has a podcast. I always go straight for their solo episodes.
Yes, and you were the first one. I don't know. I mean, lots of people listen to my solo episode, but I think you are the first one that actually pointed that one out.
Also, solo episodes are often shorter than interviews. So if a show is new to you and you're not sure yet if you like it, it's easier to commit to an 18-minute solo episode than a 55-minute interview, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In this moment, I want to give a big shout out to Nicole, because Nicole is just logged on and she's listening to us. And the reason why I'm giving her a shout out is because we had a conversation yesterday about storytelling. And she, like you challenged me to those solo episodes, she challenged me to record a video and tell a story through a video. So, yes. So quick shout out to Nicole.
Awesome. I love that.
Yes. But yeah, no, I love all these tips and tricks, and I definitely have to apply a couple of those to my own show. But again, it's like our conversation that we had last week, where I was on your podcast. I mean, we talked about branding, and the essential story is the same, but out of a different lens, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah. And we're going to, so one thing that you and I had talked about as well, is that the program that I do for the high school and middle school students, you're like, maybe I need to sign up for that program to learn like the structure of a podcast. Like you need your intro and you need your content and then you need your outro or whatever that is. And I am actually going to be doing a different version of that online this summer, starting in August, for those who either already have a podcast or are just starting a podcast, that we can go over those skills and those nuts and bolts and those strategies. So even if you've been podcasting, maybe there's something that you didn't know in the beginning that will unlock making it easier for you. And I don't have the promo materials up for that yet. I'm kind of a seat of the pants entrepreneur style, like something strikes me and then I just put it out there and put up a landing page. So I don't have any of that at the time of this recording. Yes. But I will say that the two ways that you can be the first to find out about how that works and whether that's going to be a good fit for you is the private podcast, the secret podcast, Beats Love and Podcasting, which I'll give you that sign up link for.
Yes, because I was going to sign up.
Or the other way is something that I wanted to offer to your listeners and or viewers in this case, which is if you wanted to do a 30-minute completely free, completely not salesy, no sales pitch involved unless you directly ask me about my services, a 30-minute conversation with me about your podcast or your podcast idea and sort of what you're thinking, where your challenge is, what questions you have, where we can just kind of shortcut that, like I said in the beginning, I went the long, free DIY Google around way. I mean, I don't know, maybe Claude or ChatGPT can tell you how to launch a podcast right now and you don't need me, but.
Well, at least it points you to Riverside. I can tell you that much.
Yes. Or it tells you to get both StreamYard and Riverside. I will tell you, no. You do not need to waste your money on two platforms. But if you want to shortcut that and just kind of get some ideas, like you said, that outside perspective, then I am offering some 30-minute consultation calls. And I believe I made you a custom link, which I'm guessing will be in the show notes.
Yes, that will be in the show notes. But
it's bit.ly/behind the brand pod.
Yes.
And so then I'll know that you came from this show. You came from Svenja's audience. Perfect. And yeah, it's no tricks, no obligation, just 30 minutes on Zoom with me to talk about your show. Because I started doing those calls actually because I learned so much from what people's questions are. Because I've been doing this for so long, especially people who are newer or are just starting, I forget what questions people have. It's like a friend of mine recently was traveling with someone that she had met who had never flown on an airplane before. And my friend said, "What tips do you have for a first-time flyer?" And I was like, I don't even remember.
No.
Like, I travel enough that it's so second nature to me
Yeah.
that I don't remember what it's like to have never flown.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I really had to think about that. Like, what is it that you need to know as a first-time flyer? And it just kind of like stopped me. And it's kind of the same thing with podcasting. It's like things that seem obvious to me that you wouldn't need to say or you wouldn't need to point out. It's like, oh no, not everybody knows that. And it can be so helpful if someone's like, oh, you just need to do this thing, or, oh, this is how this works, or, no, you don't need 2 recording platforms.
I mean,
no, please don't buy that type of microphone that ChatGPT told you to buy. You're going to have problems, whatever that is. And so that's what these, consultations help to remind me of in my business is what is it that people are having questions about? And the tech is different. The strategy is different now than it was 10 years ago. So what are people asking about now? And that's really, they're really mutually beneficial calls.
And out of experience, we had this call. I mean, we had a lot of calls, but part of one of our calls was talking just about ideas about the podcast. And we were talking about This Might Get Creative. And you had so many great ideas that I still need to, implement. But for example, the banners, I did not know about these banners. And this is just a little thing where, it makes so much sense. Yes, every guest should have a little banner. And also we talked about roundtables, and we talked about just like, how would I even go about this? And it was so helpful to me that I would recommend everyone who just wants to learn about it and maybe is thinking about in the future having a podcast. You don't even have to have everything set up or a title or any graphics, anything. If you just want to do it eventually, I would highly recommend to talk to you, Andrea, because it was so helpful. I'm
an idea machine when it comes, especially to other people's work and other people's content.
Yeah, but I also, I had when I first got started, of course, I because I was thinking I already had the show, even though I didn't have a microphone, anything. I had nothing, but I already promoted it. So I was a little backwards. But ChatGPT and Claude and all that helped. But then also on Instagram, I got to know Mike, and he does the cutting for me. That was before we met. And he had also so many, he had no doubt whatsoever that I will have listeners. But in my mind, it was so scary. It was like, oh my God, nobody's going to listen to me. And but he was right. And just by talking to people who are already doing it and who are experts in the whole, in the podcasting world, it's so beneficial. So if anyone can only recommend, contact Andrea. And also get someone, and Andrea is a perfect example for that too, to edit and cut your episodes.
Yes, doing your own can be very time consuming. It's where a lot of people get stuck and get frustrated, unless you love doing it. Some people love doing it and then do it. Yeah. But if you don't love doing it, don't do it.
No, absolutely not. And so for everyone who's listening right now, any tips how to get started, how to, if you have that spark, what do you need to do?
Yeah. If you haven't started a podcast yet and you're thinking that this is something that you might want to do, what I like to start with is write down 100 podcast ideas, episode ideas. That could be a topic that you want to talk about. That could be a topic you're curious about. That could be somebody that you might want to talk to. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be your episode list, but if you have an idea for a podcast, committing to writing down 100 podcasts, people are like, what? But that's how long it's going to take before you start seeing traction. I mean, it might take less than 100 episodes, but if you're going to do it, like commit to it and say, I'm going to do this. And here are all of my ideas right now of what we could possibly talk about. And, sky's the limit. Put down guests that you have no idea if they would ever talk to you or not. And just make that brainstorm list, because I know I get excited from the content. I don't, I know the tech. I'm comfortable with the tech. I don't get excited about tech. Some people do. That's not me. I get excited about the ideas, about the connections that I'm going to make, about what it is that we're going to talk about. And that's what gets me into that groove. And then I want you to also listen to podcasts. I cannot tell you the number of people that I have worked with or talked to who want to start a podcast who don't listen to podcasts. It's fine. You don't have to become like the number one podcast fan, but I do want you to kind of see what's out there and not to get into a comparison trap. So this is the thing to avoid, is don't listen to a bunch of other podcasts and say, oh, my podcast is never going to be that good. Or, oh, like they've already talked about every topic that I want to talk about. It's not for that. It's just to get a lay of the land, especially in your niche or in your topic area, of what conversations are being had and how can you have that conversation differently. And that's that first differentiation thing. So you have all your ideas written down, 100 at least.
I have none.
100 ideas.
I have none.
And don't let that be like, I don't have 100 ideas yet, I can't podcast. Don't do that. Just set a target goal. If you don't reach the target goal, it's fine. If you only come up with 50, it's not the end of the world. If you only come up with 5, then that might not be your topic. If you have I'm going to create a podcast about personal branding, but you can only think of 5 things you want to talk about, that's not a sustainable podcast. Could you make a limited web series on 5 ideas? Sure. But it's not something that's going to carry you multiple years into the future, right? So see how many you can get down and then go and look and see what else is out there and what are the conversations that are happening around your topic. How can you have that differently? What's your unique take on that? I'm like, rebel. What do you disagree with? If most people in personal branding are saying AI is the future, what do you think? Do you think that? And if you have an argumentative or a rebellious point of view on something, that's gold right there for podcasting. Podcast listeners love conflict and controversy. So yeah, get your ideas out there, get excited about the content, see what else is out there. Just do a little research project for yourself and then figure out where you can be different. And, that's where the ideas will start to come and you can figure out the nuts and bolts and how to, but I really starting with that content and that point of differentiation, which is part of your brand. It's part of that unique character and personality. I think that's a really fun and useful place to start.
That was very helpful. Needless to say, I do not have this list. I have it in my head, but I do not have this list. But that might be something that I'm going to start with the roundtables. And we talked about it a little bit to have some, experts and all that, different topics. So anyways, long story short.
For the roundtables, that's, here are the topics I'm thinking of. Here are some people that I might like to have on. And then you're just matching those up and seeing what comes out. And then sometimes a new idea will come out of that conversation, right? We should do a whole episode about this. So it just kind of starts that, I don't ever want people to feel, and this is something that happens a lot, is that people start a podcast, they're excited, And then it starts to feel like a content hamster wheel where it's like, oh no, I need an episode for next week. You're like, or I don't have a guest book, or my guest canceled, or whatever. If you have that bank of ideas, you can just easily, I mean, I just go to my Apple Notes app is just like chock full of like, oh, I should do an episode about this. I should do an episode about this. And then I'll go back through it and I'm like, oh yeah, I never did that one. Oh yeah, I should reach out to that person. Like it's my second brain.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I definitely have to start doing that because I'm not doing that. So see, the 30-minute call, make sure you sign up for it. So if someone would like to get in contact with you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so my website is thecreativeimpostor.com. And like I said, that private podcast is a great place because once you're on that list, you can reach out to me and ask me podcasting questions for free. And I will answer in the form of a podcast episode
cool.
for everyone. Yeah, I'll give you that. Or to reach out and book that 30-minute coaching with me. That was bit.ly/behindthebrandpod. And those are probably the two best ways. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. Sometimes I'm there a lot. Sometimes I'm there not at all. I'm kind of like email me, old school
letters.
Kind of send me a letter in the post. No, probably not, because we have really bad mail delivery service here. It's like I won't get mail for like 5 days and then suddenly it all comes on one day. I'm like, what is happening?
That's funny. Perfect. No, I will make sure to list everything in the show notes, not your address for personal letters, but all the other,
a little creepy
other addresses. And just one question, and I ask that everyone, what is something that no one knows about you?
Something that, I think when I saw this was one of your standard questions, I was like, this is hard because I'm an open book. I overshare everything about my life. But one thing that people who meet me in the now times may not know is that before I did podcasting, before I did yoga, before I did my undergraduate degree in broadcast and television and film production, I actually studied opera. So my whole life growing up, from the time that I was little, I was a singer, and I started out singing in church and just continued to study voice, did musicals in high school, like the school musical, all that stuff. So learned acting, was never great at dancing, but I did my best. And in college, I originally started college my freshman year as a vocal performance major in opera and was miserable.
Oh, but it still sounds pretty cool.
It sounds cool. But what I discovered I have a tendency to do is I take something that I love to do and then I turn it into work. I turn it into an obligation and then I don't love to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. I didn't love it. And then I had a little identity crisis of like, well, if I'm not a music major, like, who am I? But yes, so I do have an opera background. I have a love for opera. I do still sing from time to time. You can catch me at a karaoke or, something like that. Yeah. But that's a background that some people are surprised to learn.
Oh, yeah. See, I would have told the story that something no one knows about me is that I get really, really, really grouchy when I don't have coffee. So your opera story is a lot better than my coffee story, even though we ran out of our coffee. Yes, our coffee machine broke, and my husband, every morning he's bringing me a coffee every morning. And then
it's for his own survival.
It is. Oh, I have not looked at it that way. But that day, and I don't know, and I don't want to we make our own almond milk, and he put salt into the almond milk, and then the coffee tasted just terrible. Whole day, the whole weekend was done. Not my best moment, but it was terrible. Yes. Aww. So, and I realized, wow, I really do get grouchy without a coffee. But yes, awesome. This was wonderful conversation, and I hope we are going to continue to have lots more calls and talks. And
absolutely.
I will link everything in the show notes. And if you're a listener and you are not really sure about your brand, you can go to linecreatives.com. And on linecreatives.com, I have a brand audit scorecard, and you can just click. Takes a couple minutes. How long did it take you? You took it?
Like 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah. And then it gives you a score and tells you if you need help or not. So, yes. Anyway, so this live recording worked well. I'm happy about that.
Yes.
And very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And hope to talk to you soon.
Me too.
Thanks for listening to This Might Get Creative, a Behind the Brand podcast by Line Creatives. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show and share it with someone who loves discovering local businesses and creative entrepreneurs. You can learn more about my work at linecreatives.com or find me on Instagram, line.creatives, and LinkedIn at Line Creatives. Until next time, keep showing up, keep creating, and keep getting seen.